No matter how development is measured, it is always geographically uneven. In this lecture, we will examine key concepts in development, such as several development theories. These topics are important to geography because of the desire to pinpoint and analyze the unevenness from one place or region to another, as well as the social and environmental consequences of development in hopes to understand the differences around the world. Over the last 50 years, several models and theories were created to explain development. The first one is the classical model of development proposed by Walter Rostow. In this model, there are 5 stages of development that would transform a country with a traditional or pre-modern socio-economic system into one with a highly modern society and economy, using investment as the stimulus for economic growth. Stage 1 is the traditional stage, in which the economy is based on subsistent agriculture and bartering, with little going back into the economy for growth. Stage 2 is the preconditions for takeoff, in which the economy begins to change into a modern society. In this stage, a business class emerges, agriculture becomes more commercialized, new industries grow, and productivity begins to increase. Stage 3 is the takeoff, in which the economy makes the switch from traditional to modern. This happens through high rates of investment and the adoption of new technologies. Manufacturing expands rapidly and produces sizable profits, which in turn goes back into the economy for financing new investments. Stage 4 is the maturity stage, in which the economy sustains economic growth that fuels ongoing industrialization and urbanization. The economy continues to expand and diversify. And last, stage 5 is the high mass consumption stage, in which the economy is at the most prosperous stage. At this stage, there are high levels of production and consumption stemming from the service sector with high per capita incomes and more disposable income. There were 3 criticisms with this model. 1, not every country begins at the same starting point. 2, it has a narrow focus of linear growth. It does not take into consideration aid from another country. And 3, it is strongly Eurocentric in that it would evolve into a Western society. This may not work for every country. Shortly after Rostow's theory emerged, a second development theory was proposed called the dependency theory. This theory was more of a relational process linked to international trade with dominant and dependent states instead of a series of stages. Dominant countries were more developed while the dependent states lacked economic resources and power and therefore relied on the dominant states to provide goods and services. Dependency can develop through imperial dominance or financial technological dominance, as shown in these diagrams. Unfortunately, the dependent states get into a rut and it becomes difficult for them to get out of the dependency. Please pause the video and study the diagrams. There are no questions to answer here. A third development theory, which emerged in 1974 by Emanuel Wallerstein, also bases its idea on dependency and underdevelopment. But this theory did not see international system of trade as the cause of underdevelopment. It proposed that the capitalistic world system caused dependency and underdevelopment. This theory envelopes the world into one economy connected through and by a network of capitalism, not just separate economies trading between each other. Furthermore, it centers on an international division of labor between different countries, which division can be classified as core states, peripheral, or semi-peripheral areas. Core states contain a strong military, highly skilled labor force, and has a diverse economy. Peripheral regions are more labor-intensive economies, politically weak, lack diversified economies, and tend to be former colonies. In between the two are semi-peripheral regions, usually those in transition. It's either a core state in decline or a peripheral region on the rise. The map on the left shows the world system in 1900 following his description. The external areas represented the most isolated places, detached from workings of capitalism, but likely to become part of the periphery as capitalism expanded. The map on the right shows the world after the world system concepts of core, semi-peripheral, and periphery were applied. In this theory, the core states profit tremendously from the relationships accumulating more capital and wealth. However, this system is dynamic and therefore the hierarchy could change. But the core states would always be on top, and there would always be an international division of labor. A fourth theory called Neoliberal model of development emerged in the 1980s, stated the idea that capitalism could actually be promoted and drive development rather than underdevelopment and dependency as long as the right reforms were implemented for developing countries. The term neoliberalism, in this economic sense, refers to the revival of a favoring of a free, unregulated market and the removal of barriers to trade, as this form of economy was initially introduced by people centuries ago under the economic theory of liberalism. In a political sense, liberalism refers to the promotion of political equality through the development of laws and rights that are universally applicable. It furthermore emphasizes the protection of human rights, property rights, and individual freedoms. The reforms needed to bring about economic growth under this theory were called Structural Adjustment Programs, or SAP for short. SAPs are a country-specific economic policy based on neoliberal principles intended to promote economic growth and development. The idea behind this was that the developing countries need a total overhaul to allow economic competition and free markets to flourish. Table 9.2 shows what reforms and deregulations would need to be made. Pause the video and take a moment to read and analyze the list. There are some criticisms of these reforms. Number one, since all SAPs call for a reduction in spending, healthcare systems are usually impacted in a negative way. Two, SAPs also affect the subsidies of agriculture that most countries have in place, therefore raising food prices to the public. Three, SAPs recommend the devaluation of local currency, which raises the prices of imports, which are passed on to the consumer. And four, SAPs promote the development of exports, which developing countries fall back on, continuing the exploitation of natural resources, or they remain an agricultural economy with little chance to diversify. SAPs then require external forces to intervene with internal affairs of the developing countries, such as the World Bank and the IMF. Please pause the video and answer the following. Describe how and why this map might change in the future under the world system theory. There are no one answer for this question, but it requires you to think critically about what could change and why. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer.